From Bossier City, Louisiana, this is the Grouch and the Brainstorm. Welcome back to another episode of the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And from Bossier City, this is Mike. Hello, everyone. I have Matt.
Hey, guys.
And we have Jill.
Hello.
And we have two of the Clubhouse Queens down here today.
Double trouble.
We got Michelle. Say hi, Michelle.
Hi.
And we got Faye.
Hey, everybody.
All right. And we are sure glad to have you ladies on here. So we're going to cover a couple things, but before we roll off into it, I do want to make a couple announcements for our audience, and we love to interact with our audience and want to start doing it more. So we do have an email address that we will answer, and it is gnbbossier@gmail.com. That's like girl and boy or grouch and brainstorm, Bossier@gmail.com. And we also have a voicemail line. You can call in at area code 985-377-4816, and we will check the voicemails. We can play them online, just FYI. So if you're not comfortable with it getting played online, let us know. We'll just address whatever concern you have vocally, and we'll get that out. So tonight we have a with our special guest, we have a special topic, and the Grouch and the Brainstorm was designed for newcomers or people who may be coming back who just want a different perspective, or here's some people who have experience with the different topics. And as promised, this is episode is going to be on step. Anybody want to guess?
25.
Not 13, Matt. Matt was hoping for
my next guess.
No 13th stepping.
No, not in here. Step 3, and just for the listeners' knowledge, step 3 is made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him, and that is a deep subject. And it might not be the same for every single person. And a lot of it is, as we understood Him, goes into that too. So we're going to get a little experience from one of our regulars, which is Matt. I want to hear Matt's experience with this, and then we're going to roll off into everybody at the table. So hit it, Matt.
All right. Well, excuse me. So the as we understood Him part, that's the part I think myself, and I think a lot of people that come in there, some people may come in, with a background spiritually already, but for mine, it was blow it up and start over when I got to this point. And so even though being raised in my dad was a pastor and grew up in church and never missed church growing up my whole life, I had his understanding and what I was told, but I didn't have my own understanding of a higher power, God. And so to turn will and life over to something that you're not real sure, I wasn't real sure at that point what was what, So it's and the understanding part, has changed as I've gone on over the years too. I understand more as I grow with it, but I was very fortunate when I got ready to do the steps. I was in treatment with a couple of guys, and very spiritual, and they worked at the treatment center, and I spent a lot of time talking with those two guys about this right here. And so I had some what's the word? Not confusion, but I think I had some things that were told to me that I didn't necessarily, that kind of pushed me away from God that I had been taught growing up. And the more I researched it on my own, I came to understand a little better, what God was all about. And still not very religious to this day, but prayer wise and relationship with God is better than it's ever been in my whole life. So church is still tough. It's just because I can't sit still that long. That's the main thing. But I enjoy it, but I can talk with God on a bass boat with the sun coming up and nobody else around, and I get more out of that than I do sitting in a church pew. And I think it's the get quiet and slow down. And for me, that's when I tend to kind of I'm at my best spiritually as far as where I need to be spiritually. So yeah, I think though step 3 and all the steps as you go through them, you're going to evolve and grow with what you're doing, and that ties in with that. So it's vastly, my relationship with God today is vastly different than it was 5 years ago when I came in. So it was baby steps, just getting in the door here and trying to work these steps and knowing that the first 2 involved God. And I was like, or two of the first 3. And I was kind of leery of that, and didn't know how to do that. I do have a better understanding now with a sponsor and with, talking with people, but it's so much better today with that, and gives me a little alternative to, and especially in moments, when I need it, it's there, so I don't know if that explains it very well, but that's kind of my take on it.
I like it.
Thanks, Mike.
I like it.
Thanks,
It
Mike.
works.
You can tell you do it.
I do it.
You do it.
I do
shows.
it.
You
That's
do
right. I
do
do
it.
do
It
it.
shows.
Well, make sure you clean up after yourself.
I do the 25 steps. So, what do you
Yeah.
expect out of me?
We'll get there. Like some people have 5 things, some people have 8, some people have 670. Whatever keeps them
Some
busy.
of us are sicker than others.
Yeah.
I need more than you guys.
Amen to that.
More steps.
Faye, what do you got on step 3? Tell us a little bit of your perspective.
Well, I grew up in a very devoutly religious home, and in my early life, I had a good, close relationship with my Creator, to the point that before I started drinking, this is back in my 20s and early 30s. I didn't start drinking till I was 47. But
Late bloomer.
a very late bloomer. But earlier in my life, I had a husband that was terminally ill, and he was ill for about 10 years. And I got to the point where, something I've heard that has stuck with me is, when you get to the point where God is all you've got, you'll find He's all you need. And we got to that point toward the end of his illness. I got to the point where, there was nothing more I could do. All I had to do was depend on God, and I had an awesome relationship.
Yeah.
But then after he died, and I decided that, I'm going to live life for myself now. That was my problem. And I started drinking, and the alcohol built a wall between me and him.
You and God.
Me and God. Yeah.
Did you start drinking immediately after your husband passed?
No. He died in '93, and I didn't start drinking until like 2000, right around 2000. So it was a good while before I started drinking. And his death was not the reason I started
Right.
drinking, but that there's a lot more that goes with that. But as I drank, the more I drank, and I drank for 20 years, almost 20 years. And the more I drank, the higher and the thicker that wall between me and God got. And when I came into AA and I started working the steps, immediately that wall began to crumble.
Yeah.
And I was back into the relationship that I had had with my God before. And it was the most awesome thing. That has been one of my greatest accomplishments in AA, is to revive that relationship that I had at one time. And I know now, he never went anywhere. It was me.
Oh, yeah.
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 And but I know now that I can depend on him for anything.
Yeah.
For anything. It's not going to be, life is not going to be without its challenges. It's going to be there. But I know that he's watching out for me, and he's got his hand on me.
Do you remember what it was about coming into the rooms that brought you back to that relationship?
It was, surrender. I had gotten to the point where, like we all do, I'm gonna quit drinking, and I'm gonna do this to quit drinking, and I'm gonna do this to quit drinking, and I'm gonna do this to quit drinking. And it finally got to the point where it was quit drinking, or my daughter was going to take my keys away from me, and it was going to be, and life was not going to be good. And I realized that I had tried for so long, and I couldn't do it by myself. Yeah. I could not do it by myself. And I tell you, it was such a relief when I walked into the room for the first time.
Yeah.
I just felt like the world had been taken off my shoulders. I was in with a group of people that knew exactly what I had been through, and knew exactly what my problem was, and knew how to help me with it. And that was that's how I came. And I knew all along that if I asked God and I trusted God to help me with this, He would. But I was blocked by the alcohol.
Yeah.
Once the alcohol went away, the relationship was back again.
Alcohol's a great persuader.
Yes, it is.
And it says that in the big book.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it and kind of like your story, Faye, sometimes the alcohol ultimately led me back to the God of my childhood. Mm-hmm. And, so I can't just sit here and dog alcohol all day, because if it had not been for, I don't know if the ego would have ever driven me that far, but the alcohol sure as hell got me back in there with God anyway. So
me too.
Well, it's being able to release everything to Him, and not have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about anything anymore, because I know that He's going to take care of it. Like I said, it's not always easy, and I don't do it perfectly.
Yeah.
But I can depend on my God, and I know that I'm at a place where He will take care of me.
Oh yeah. And He
really
seems
does
to be.
feel like that way.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're always helping each other out in that regard. When we get to worrying about something, we're like, hey, are you in control? Are you trying to run this show?
So you kind of offer each other spiritual assistance.
Absolutely.
We really, in a lot of ways.
Boy,
yes.
that helps.
It does. It definitely does.
Yeah.
She's much better at it than I am. But she's had a lot more practice.
Been at it longer.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so
experience says a lot.
It does. I'm so happy to have her as my
How
sponsor.
long have both you guys been sober? We know that, but the people listening may not know that.
I'm coming up on 3 years. In a couple of weeks,
Close.
I'll have
All
3
right.
years.
I have been sober a little over 2 years. February 4th,
Okay.
2021.
Well, you
when I
damn
got
near
sober.
2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Isn't it funny?
I used to, just every minute of every day till I got that next chip, and now I'm kind of set, not to say I got this thing, because I don't, nobody does, but, I don't have that same, I think about, when am I going to get that next chip? I just, it's kind of just a normal part of my life now. I finally settled into that this is my life now, and I love it. That thing with God. I'm sorry, is it my turn?
Oh, that was to
right.
get us started.
Okay, yeah, no,
We don't do turns.
I
Roll
love
with it.
talking about God, but that was definitely not always the case. I came in the program so very, very angry with the God of my understanding. I'd never heard of page 417, the portion on acceptance. Well, that's the newest edition in the big book. I've never heard that in my life, and that is really what caused me to have my big aha spiritual awakening, because it was like, wow, what it was. I was so angry because I feel like I was a victim of God, that He was this mean kid with a magnifying glass and we were the ants. And He was just seeing what kind of mess He could allow to happen. There was a lot of stuff, growing up, I couldn't square with the loving God. I didn't understand the concept that there is evil in this world. And that, God doesn't override the free will of His people. So, bad stuff happens to you. But I just kept thinking, God doesn't like me. I've done too many bad things. if he would have really loved me like everybody said, those things wouldn't have happened to me. You know, the stuff I saw in Iraq, now I'm not going to turn this into a, oh my God, my trauma meeting. But honestly, that was the anger. That was the anger. And yeah, that absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. That should be tattooed on me somewhere because that was freedom to me. And, I see my sponsor, Faye, who I'm a very needy sponsee, and I'm getting less and less needy. But God,
aren't all sponsees needy?
My favorite kind.
Yeah.
God knew exactly what He was doing when He put us together. As far as I told her I would never go to a Catholic church. The building would burn down if I walked in. And, I know it seems like I'm just trying to be Faye. But, I followed her in that regard, too, because I saw what she had and I wanted it. Yep. And I didn't have anything that looked good to me. And I remember my aunt, when I was growing up, was Catholic. And I always felt really peaceful when I was with them because her dad wasn't an alcoholic. And there was nothing bad happened at their house. So I loved going with them. And so I remembered that. And, I know for me, knowing that there's always a prayer to say, knowing what the rules are, the structure of the Catholic Church, but also like the love. So for me, that's where I found the love, and I found that my brokenness was actually a good thing.
You found that in the Catholic Church?
I did.
Okay.
Like you could have knocked me over with a feather if I ever thought that would have happened. And I still find it kind of funny, because, I kind of went all the way but it has brought me peace. But I wouldn't have ever gotten there where I feel serene and peaceful a lot of the time. That would have never happened if I didn't walk into the rooms of VA. Or actually, when I'm a veteran, so I went to the SUDS program at the VA.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and real good program. But it was a bit of a culture shock. I mean, I'm used to not being around a lot of other females when I go anywhere at the VA because there's just not as many of us.
Right.
But I was definitely the only one in that treatment program. And most of the men in there were extremely older than I was. And but you know what? After the first couple of days in the treatment center, I was like, wow, look for the similarities and not the differences. I did in fact belong there. And I started coming to meetings, and all I did for the first 6 months was cry and shake.
I did a lot of that while I was drinking too.
Me too.
Especially the shaking part.
Crying and shaking
and peeing on myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll surrender to that one.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That was pretty gross, TMI. But hey, who hasn't done it?
Chances are, if they're listening to this podcast, they've been there.
There's been
That's
a
right.
urine story.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, no. I mean, I look like a respectable person now, and I love God with all my heart and all my soul. And that just would have never happened without AA, because I needed somebody to tell me it's okay, whatever you came in here with, just as long as, and that's why people who have a certain religion in the rooms of AA don't go there, because I know I would have ran. I would have ran or run. I would have run away. So I'm super grateful today to have God, because even when I fail so hard in life and make stupid decisions, even in sobriety, yeah, I do that a lot, then Faye's right, I'm never alone. I'm never by myself. And I need that.
Yeah.
I need that.
Absolutely.
So I'm really happy.
Go around,
I am today. I'm really happy. And I'm happy that we just celebrated Lisa's 1 year. Woohoo.
Yeah, we had her on the show yesterday morning.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to hear that.
Me
Yeah,
too.
It is a great story. It amazes me sometimes when I see someone every day of the week, or 5 days a week, and you hear them share and you talk to them, hug them, shake their hand, whatever it is, and then you get them in front of a microphone, and when they tell their story, it's like a whole nother side of them comes out that you never have, you wasn't aware of their backstory. You just hear what you hear sitting in a room. And, unfortunately we limit that to 3 to 5 minutes in a lot of busy meetings, except for a couple people who just keep on going, but, and it happens, but man, we had a lot of fun recording yesterday with Lisa, and her story should hit sometime soon.
It's funny you said that because she just literally texted my phone and said, "Thank y'all so much. I love my home group. You all made me feel special." That's what she said.
We love you, Lisa.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. A year is that's a big deal. Any time is a big deal, but
That first year's tough.
too, when you're ready, I think with God to spiritually. When you're not ready, you're not ready. And I remember my ex-wife now, but wife at the time, we about a year before I went to treatment, she goes, "We need to go to church." Man, I haven't been in church in a minute, okay? And we lived in a little town, but it was probably 400 people in this church, and they had 2 services every Sunday morning, so a lot of people, 400 people there. I probably know 350 of them.
You're related to 350 of them.
Well, that is Mississippi. I ain't going to get into all that. But family tree doesn't fork over there. You know what I'm saying? But thanks, Mike, for totally breaking my concentration. I go in, so I'm like, I'm going to go. So I don't even got all my kids and me and her. We go in church. And all the men in there, I know them from around town, and they're all giving me the stink eye, like, "Oh, look at this, what drug in here." And I sit down with a bulletin. I'm trying to behave myself. I pull the bulletin up to see how long church is going to be that day, exactly how many songs. And guess what they have in there? The prayer list.
And you're on it.
Guess who's number 2 on the freaking prayer list?
No, stop it.
My name.
Oh.
Drug, alcohol addiction was the reason for the prayer.
Well, I thought that's what they had as your last name.
No, well, it should have been at that point. It's a long last name, but that should have been. I'm not even exaggerating.
What did you do?
I wanted to crawl in a hole and die.
Did you pray for yourself?
No, I didn't. I burnt the doors off getting out of there, and my wife goes, don't. It was my mother-in-law. She went there, and she put me on and so after church, she goes, "You've been on there a while." I'm like, "Well, thanks for letting me know." Like, yes. So you might be an alcoholic if you go to church and your own name is on the prayer list. So, and then they're all like, "Get him, he's in here." And I'm like, "Nope, I'm out." So I don't even think I heard the first song.
Get him.
I probably threw a couple of bucks in the thing, and I had to come back and pick up my wife and kids. I was not staying. I was like, "I'm out. Y'all can stay. I'll be back." So
that's one of the best stories I've heard.
Man,
Yeah.
you have no idea.
My ex-wife is, and me and her are still pretty close. She's Catholic, and I was raised Pentecostal, so I didn't go to church after the age of 7 or 8, and still had a close relationship with God. But and where I'm going with this is Bill's story in the Big Book talks about how when he was at Winchester Cathedral and he read the doggerel that, here lies Hampshire Grenadier, he felt something. He didn't know what it was, and he soon went off to war or whatever it was, and that was blotted out by the calamity of just life in general, mainly within our head. And but when I would go to church with my ex-wife, and I would be in Holy Trinity is where we went. It's the only church we really went to. My daughter was baptized in this one over here, St. Jude. But besides that, our we went to church there, and I encouraged my children to go because I wanted them to grow up in religion. And I knew I didn't go very much, so I'm not gonna buck the whole Catholic thing. It didn't bother me a bit, just as long as they were in a church. And but I would feel that same thing when I would be in that church. And here's where I'm really going with this story. So one day I'm in Holy Trinity, and I'm hungover, and I'm sweating, and I feel really bad, you know. But I'm there. It was we actually went on a Sunday morning. Usually it was on Saturday night. But there were bees. There were bees in the church, and they kept getting on me. None ever stung me, right? But they kept flying to me and getting on me.
They were getting drunk.
No, these were not deep.
off your
not
atmosphere.
DTs or anything. There was actual bees in the church, you know. And I kept thinking maybe I
Am I
don't-
hallucinating?
Yeah, maybe I don't need to be here, you know. So, and I was, you know, dying of thirst. You know, and you see, there's
That's a terrible
headache.
but right there in the waiting room was a whole bunch of holy water. You know, I mean, but I was dying of thirst. But I remember feeling that sense of peace whenever I was in there. You know, and most of the time I wasn't hungover, believe it or not. Whenever I would go to church, but I could feel that same thing that Bill felt when he was at Old Winchester Cathedral, and it was moving. But as soon as I walk out of church, I'd go right back to what's important to Mike.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And never the thought of helping another human being. You know, it's always what can I do to get my next, whatever makes me feel good, whether it's, you know, whatever, drinking, or whether it was working, or just, you know, one of my plethora of addictions. So how about you, Jill? What you got on turning that old wheel in life over?
So, I mean, a lot of you guys have heard my story, and bits and pieces of it over and over again. And we talked about it last week, you know, turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Well, that to me implied that, first of all, I had one and that I understood him. And that freaked me out. I couldn't even wrap my head around that. I couldn't wrap my head around the whole turning your will over, because I didn't even know what that meant. You know, and this one step freaked me. I remember bawling, crying. So I was like, how am I supposed to know what God's will is? And I remember asking my counselor and her looking at me like I'm a complete idiot.
I believe Jennifer Googled it. What is? Yeah.
I didn't know what that meant. Like, is there a list of things that you do? Like, does that mean you you know, pray on your knees? I mean, I just didn't know what that entailed. And I also didn't know what my will entailed, because I was like, you know, she kept saying I was in my will. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm doing what I've always done. Like, and to me, it was so big and so unfathomable that it freaked me out. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I just cried and I cried and I cried. And I remember lots of times going to her office and say, you know, oh, I think I got it. You know, and I'd run to her office and she'd be like, no. And then I'd be like, and then I'd go run off, you know, and I did that, like, I swear, for a month. I was really stuck on that step. But, you know, I'd started praying, and the thing is, what it says is made a decision. And I did make a decision. And let me tell you something. I was about 0.1% willing. I mean, I'm talking about a little bitty piece of sand. Because first of all, like, what does that mean if I do this? What's going to happen if I do this? Does it mean I'm weak? This really didn't make a whole lot of sense. And, you know, I did it, you know, again, and I was talking to her about the whole surrender thing. And again, like, I don't know what you want me to give you, because I was thinking it in a very concrete and literal fashion. I didn't know you could just, like, surrender something over to God or something spiritual, because you can't see it. Like, totally concrete here. And I did so. And I remember thinking that was so weird. I remember being in the cabin thinking, okay, so hi, God, hey. Yeah, it felt weird. I didn't know who I was talking to. I was judging myself, the whole deal. And I did it. And I continued to do it. But, you know, I like to think of this step as, and I love to say, the God of my misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that. I like that.
I love it, because I didn't understand my higher power for a long time. And there's still things I don't understand, because if I think too much about it, I will freak myself out. Mm-hmm. I really will. And I'll try to over intellectualize a lot of things, and so I have to, that's what I like to say, a God of my misunderstanding. The thing is, I continued through the steps just the way I was supposed to. Not really knowing, what the future would hold, not really knowing if it would work, just taking that leap of faith. And through going through the steps, I found my higher power. And I remember, I can't recall when exactly happened. I do remember being on a pink cloud. And I do remember when I went through the steps about a year and a half, I felt something I'd never felt. Like the insides of my body, everything stopped shaking. And I don't know if a lot of people understand that, especially not alcoholics. But I felt like my life, I was constantly on vibrate. Like just, and this is not including the DTs. This is something totally else. And that stopped. And I remember I felt really alert and everything felt really clear. And just like the book talks about the rose-colored glasses, colors seemed brighter. Mm. And I was like, wow, this is really weird. I started to have that psychic change. And I know this, not exactly the step we're talking about, but me making that one decision, and having many doubts and just trying something different for once changed my whole entire life. Now, when I did this, I didn't trust it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
No, I'm with you.
No, me
This
neither.
will not work. You don't understand. This kind of stuff doesn't happen to me. And not only that, I don't believe in anything. But I was trying to, because I could say I believe that there is an ultimate creator. Something really big makes this all happen. And that made sense to me. And, the thing that I think that was tying me up is that I thought I had to have someone else's higher power. And, kind of like what most people believe in. And I just couldn't get behind that because it didn't make any sense to me. But every time I've gone through this step, I get that much closer and I understand just a little bit more. And I feel like there's so much to learn when it comes to God, my higher power, and and all the beautiful things that you can learn through surrendering and trusting and all those beautiful things that we talk about. And I know that I've only touched like the tip of the iceberg with this. And that's what kind of motivates me to keep going on, because I do want to know more. I want to know my higher power even better.
Looking forward to it.
It is. It's something exciting. Definitely. Because like the first time I remember thinking, man, I felt faith for the first time. The second time it was like I felt grace. And it's not like I know it. I felt it on my insides.
Yeah.
On my insides, but that sounded weird. But anyway, step 3 was probably one of the most difficult steps. That was more difficult to me than 4, 5, or 9. I have no problem telling everybody what happened and, going through my part and all of that, but trying, and I'm sure it was just, the thing was, it was ego, and which was stemmed from an incredible amount of fear.
Yeah.
And to me, fear paralyzed me. Fear kept me in panic attacks and in drugs and in alcohol. And I don't think, I was so scared that I just felt like, man, I don't even know how to put this into words. Like I was okay living in it because I didn't know there was something else.
Oh, yeah.
And nor did I believe it. So it's actually step 3 that saved my life. When I think about that, and that just suddenly just hit me.
Well, that's pretty good. That's good stuff. That's
We were just letting you go, man.
Yeah,
It was good.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just had like an epiphany in here. So
do you want to sponsor me?
I have to make that decision every day sometimes, the first 3 steps. I mean, in the morning time when I wake up, when I get worried about something that's going to happen that hadn't happened yet. And I do have to think about this, like, oh yeah, we gave our will and our life over to God, didn't we, Michelle? Yeah, we did. So what are you doing? Trying to control everything.
And
Yeah.
early recovery, even on into mid recovery, I can see that happening on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
Giving it, taking it, giving it, taking it.
Yeah, no,
I
it
was-
could.
oh God, I remember that.
I was such a control freak.
Well.
I had to. If everybody in the world would just do what I told them to do,
Well, I think that's in step 3 in the book, Miss Faye.
the world would be so much better.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing with me, that I never thought I controlled anything because I never told anybody what to do. But I didn't realize how I was trying to make everything in my world happen my way.
Absolutely.
And that's what I learned, like, that's not exactly what control means.
No, for us, that kind of controlling things is deadly.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
you know.
Well, nothing ever worked out my way. And so I stayed pissed. I stayed resentful. I stayed angry because, like, why? Why is this keep happening to me? And then it just spiraled out of control with the self-pity. And, we talked about it just a second ago, but I really love acceptance was the answer. To me, that is my favorite, story in the back of the book. And I have that printed out, and it's on my clipboard. My clipboard I take everywhere with me at work. I read it, I share it with.
It's like an iPad clipboard, or you like a real old time clipboard?
Oh, I'm old school.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm old school. It's not even plastic. It's that
That wood
that
stuff.
fake wood stuff.
I have 2 of them at work.
I love it. It goes everywhere with me at work, but I have that on there and I read it to people because I think that's one of the most important things you can possibly read in the big book. Because, man, that tug of war in the beginning, shit.
I just remember coming home and telling my ex-wife, acceptance is the answer.
Except that I'm coming in hammered.
No, this was after I got sober.
How did you feel about that?
Yeah, she did. I'm sure if she's still listening to the podcast, I'll hear about that. Yeah, some things only work on us.
Right.
But actually, they would work for a lot of folks,
It really
Program
sure.
work for a
This
lot of
program would benefit anybody.
I think of the AA meetings as like the microcosm of the world that I would like to see everywhere.
Yeah.
To where people of all different backgrounds come together for a common purpose, because of our common peril.
Common peril?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I don't even know what that word means. Not
Peril?
common peril.
Microcosm?
Well, you just said one I don't know earlier. I was thinking, what is that one? I don't know. You just used another one. So,
Did any of you wonder what is my life going to look like after I give it over to God? Have you ever thought about? I mean, I did. I mean, I'm first off, I'm kind of like Jill. I was confused as heck. How do I turn my will in my life? They tell me to at the club, but how do I turn my will in my life over to God? What do I do? Well, so what I did, just started saying third step prayer every morning when I woke up, and trying to remember that.
prayer. It's
And then
perfect.
somewhere during a noon meeting, right after that, it came to me that the word alcohol is not even mentioned in the third step prayer.
Nope.
Which I have to bring up the prayer, by the way. It's just, it's part of the third step. But alcohol is not even mentioned in there. And then that hit me. And I'm thinking, well, I've been focusing this whole third step thing on drinking. My will in my life was just drinking. So I've just been the whole third step, I'm turning it over to God. But all I was turning over was my drinking problem. Everything else, once I get that drinking problem solved, I've got this life licked because, smartest human being on the face of the earth. And, and if everyone did act like me and listened to me and did exactly what I said, life would be perfect. I failed to look at the complete shit show I had made out of the past 38 years.
Right?
The whole world would just be a shit show.
See,
like
I couldn't
was.
fail. I once the substances wore off, I was like, oh man, this ain't good. So I knew I had a Matthew problem. That's one thing I probably didn't struggle with. It was,
Really?
yeah, no, I knew, like, and again, the lady was my therapist when I got to treatment. She was very good about pointing out, hey, let's take a look at the facts, and the facts are this: your grand, everyone else is the problem. They're not the problem. And, yeah, I don't know if you call it, I don't know what you call it. And we hear so many stories and we hear different people and they struggle with different things. The only thing I knew by the time I got here and walked in the club was that I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I couldn't do what I was doing beforehand.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did
Yeah.
not know what would happen, and I didn't really care. When you're at the point of, I'm going to eat a bullet or take a bath with a toaster or nunchuck yourself to death or whatever, when you're at that point, it doesn't really matter. I was willing to at least try
Give it a try, yeah.
and give it a good try, and so, because I knew if I went back, it was over with. It was a matter of very short period of time.
Yeah.
So
I didn't
something
even
that-
know that, that I knew. We was talking to Mike earlier about this. My husband and I knew we were alcoholics. I mean, physically, it was evident, and we knew what it was. That ethanol absolutely had to exist in our bloodstream, or the symptoms would come. And I didn't understand that. We didn't understand, and I still didn't understand that my life was unmanageable until he died, until he drank himself to death. And not to be a bummer, but that's what I mean when it's a killer, and that stuff inside us, that we try to control ourselves. Look what happens.
Yeah.
Look what happens, and so, yeah, no, I didn't even understand anything about how to give my life over to the care of God as I understood him. I didn't understand any of that until I was desperate enough. That gift of desperation of being like, oh my God, he died. My whole identity is wrapped up in this man. I didn't know who I was anymore. And, he died, and then 3 months later, I got sober. Because it took me that long to realize, I'm going to die too. I think I kind of wanted to follow him for a while. And that sure would have happened if God didn't intervene and make me pick up the phone. And I didn't know it was God calling.
Well, if we
was.
had the consciousness at those periods of time to realize that God is doing for us what we can't do for ourselves,
Yeah.
it would probably make step 3 a lot easier.
Right? I mean, like, seriously.
But I'm still fighting it at this point, right? Not today, obviously, but at this point when I come into the rooms, I'm still fighting it. I'm still trying to decide if this is what I want to do, or do I want to go do this, or there's such a plethora of ways that I could beat this thing, right? And so I'm still fighting it. But if I could look back and say, I walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I sure as heck didn't want to. Something had to get me here. God doing for me, whatever it was. Sometimes it's tragic. Sometimes it's not so tragic. Sometimes it's comical. But no matter what, it's God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. I had a brief moment, and I mean when I say brief, like a thought that said, you don't think like this. Something is wrong with you. You better do something right now. And that was just my little moment. And obviously I did something right then instead of, it was always, I'll go to rehab Monday.
Yeah.
I'll start treatment on Sunday night or what, it was always later. It wasn't right this minute. And it used to bug the hell out of me when people would say, okay, come on, let's go right now. And I'd be like, oh, no, I'm good. No, not right now.
Got some things to do.
No, I waited until I
gotta
was
feed
so
the chickens
bad that I died twice.
Bathe the hogs. I got all kinds of stuff I got to do. So.
Suddenly became a farmer when it became time to go to rehab.
Who's going to take over my MySpace account while I'm gone?
What is amazing to me is since I've sobered up, is to look back on my drinking life and realize how much God did for me while I was drinking.
yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
How many times He saved me.
Yes.
there were times I should have died.
Oh, absolutely.
And, but by the grace of God, I mean, he was, I've always been one of those people. I say that, he has to hit me over the head with a 2x4 to get my attention.
Me too.
And that's that's what, when I came to the rooms, I kept telling my daughter, I don't want to quit drinking. I don't want to quit drinking. And I really didn't. I wanted y'all to show me how I could.
Hell, I didn't want to
continue
quit drinking either, Faye.
No, none of us did. I just wanted to make my behavior better.
Yeah, I wanted the consequences to go away.
There you go.
I almost had the attitude of like,
Exactly.
I'm going to prove this doesn't work by doing it 1,000%. And then I can sit back and go, I tried it.
Bingo.
Guys,
Told you.
Yeah.
told y'all, doesn't work.
Watch this. I'm going to turn my will and my life over to God. See
that
what
was
happens.
my attitude.
See what he
was like,
does with it.
and and Jill was talking, and I was thinking, I was in treatment. This is before I even got a sponsor. Before I didn't know anything about steps or any of that stuff. But there was 2 techs there that I talked to a lot. They were both in recovery, and they were on our wing all the time, and working. And they would sit out there and talk, and I would talk with them. And the place I went to treatment was pretty rough. It was a rough crowd in there, which I guess all treatment centers are, but this one was really rough. And I remember sitting and talking with them and like, what do I do here? And I had a pretty bad detox. Jill and I talked about this. I wasn't in real good shape. I had a variety of things my body was getting rid of at one time. It was not fun. But I remember him writing those 5 things down, and I'm in treatment, and he goes, do this. And I'm like, the first one said, pray. When you wake up, when your eyes open, pray. And I went, man,
No, go ahead.
this is already going bad. Man. I ain't got to the other 4. And now I'm picturing church and clip-on ties and
Yeah.
Clip-on ties.
Becoming a nun, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
And look
up
at this.
there.
We don't wear clip-on ties,
remember
and we're
Jim
basically
Carrey?
all nuns.
You remember Jim Carrey with the up there with the monks? That's me up there chilling in that movie. But I'm like, this isn't going good. So, but the next morning, I put it by my little table. I get up, and I'm just a wreck, an absolute wreck. And I remember laying in my bed, and I said, just please help me today to get through. Just help me get through the next 15 minutes, because I don't know, but you got to help me. And as clear as day, and it wasn't out loud, but it was in my head, and I heard something say, there's 28 other guys in here. Why are you praying for yourself? You need to be praying for them.
Ooh, awesome.
And I went,
Wow.
what was that?
That never crossed my mind.
Yeah, it never crossed mine either.
28?
I was like, yeah, there was 28. I know. How did God know? There
I had
was
like
this-
12.
It was like, oh, dude, when I walked in, they were all standing in the door. Like when you go to jail, they're all standing at the door like new, fresh meat.
When you go to jail,
And I
everybody's standing
walk
at the door
in,
waiting on you.
and I'm going down to my
Welcome,
room,
Matt.
and the guy goes, "Welcome to the hood, bruh." That's what he told me. I was like, okay. We had ants. We had ants real bad. It was a classy place.
Yeah.
But I remember we shared a restroom between 4 guys. It was 2 in each room with a restroom in the middle, shower and all that. And they were taking us to our first outside meeting. Like, we're fired up. We're going to go get in the druggy buggy and ride across town.
Yeah.
And so everybody's getting dressed up, because we're leaving the building. And so everybody's got the showers going and all that stuff. And I'm like, I'm going in there, I open the door, and there's a guy brushing his teeth. There's a guy in the shower and a guy sitting on the toilet all at the same time. And they're like, do you need in here? I'm like, I think I'm good. I think y'all got everything in the room occupied at this moment. I'm going to back out. I'll just go dirty. So that's what I did. But welcome to rehab. But yeah, that was a weird moment, And so I started doing that every morning, and I would get up and just walk down through the halls, and just kind of like try as best I could that I knew how to do to pray for those guys, and it's gone from there. But
Way before my spiritual conversion, way before that, I looked around the rooms of the Koala Club and started to see and listen to the evidence of other people's experience with their higher power, and start to see their lives change. And so who was I at that point? I'd lost so much. and was so desperate. So who was I to knock what anybody else was doing to make themselves better? And I started to try. The only prayers I knew was that third step prayer. And I made myself lay down in my bed at night while I was still shaking, and I made myself memorize it because I didn't want to be the loser reading it on the wall. Because I thought, I'm a very smart person and I have to be the best at AA. And, I just, I was going to impress you all with how fast I got to know everybody's names. And, I don't try to impress anybody but God at this point, because, I'm just a drunk, an addict, and a person with trauma problems. But I'm also the most spiritually fit that I've ever been in my life right now. And I know it's just going to keep growing, as long as I don't forget that the rooms of AA is where it all got started. And, because I had tried just church before many times, and, it was just not going to work that way. There was no program for living. There was nobody who understood except you guys. And at first I didn't even think y'all would. Y'all didn't understand me. I'm special.
I'm unique.
You
don't understand.
I'm very, very smart. I'm very talented, and it didn't matter, none of that in there, and that's what I needed, is a big ego check.
Well, for me, I can only speak for myself, and of course from my experience, but if you said something that's key, and that's you continue to grow spiritually. And there are points in my recovery that I felt like I had reached a pinnacle. I felt like it. I knew I hadn't. My feelings were one thing, but my deep down gut says, no, you can keep going. This ain't like you're going to get so old you die, or so tall you stop, or so, big you stop, or whatever. There's no distance as far as my spirituality could grow. And I have learned in my experience that I get closer to God, I gain more spirituality, I get stronger spiritually when I work with other people.
Absolutely.
I learned that. And man, look, we say in the rooms all the time, we work with other people so that we stay sober. This is an altruistic movement. All of that is true. Every bit of it makes sense. But when I'm sitting in a room with someone who is hurting, someone who's going through something, when life is really tough, and I get out of me and give them a piece of me and say, here, hold my hand, or here, let's talk about it, or here, let's pray. When I get up out of that room, I feel better. And I didn't go into the room feeling bad. So if I go into a room feeling spiritually fit, ready to roll, I could walk through a liquor store, when I go into a room, but I walk out feeling even better than I felt, then I'm growing spiritually, me anyway, and it was very fortunate that right before we came down here, I just finished working step 3, with a sponsee just right now while we were at the club. And there are a few days a week that I dedicate, instead of going to a meeting, which I love going to meetings, but I dedicate a few days a week to go in that back room and spend time with a sponsee.
Yeah, you do.
Because it helps them, it helps me, and it helps me spiritually. There's that one little moment in time where, and it might be an hour, but there's no pain at all. There's nothing. There's no depression. There's no anxiety. There's none of these things that constantly ail me, right? I go 100 miles an hour all day, every day, but I stop when I get in there because it's them. And I grow spiritually. And, before I forget about it, because I tend to do that too, but if I could say, if it's tough to make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. This is what I tell my guys, and I may get some feedback on this on my email. If it's hard to do that, just make a decision to work the rest of the steps.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it'll open up.
It's a process.
Well, I found it hard for me to completely turn my will and my life over to the care of God without cleaning house.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was hard for me to get really close to God without cleaning house and acknowledging that I had some defects. And
Well, they serve as roadblocks
well, it's,
to recovery.
Absolutely.
Kinda do. One thing that helped me work the third step, and I've recently redone this, and it's just a little like spiritual meditation that it don't matter what you believe your higher power is. I started going back in my life and looking at all those times that I felt angry at God or that he wasn't there, and literally picturing my God holding me during those worst moments, the whole, that he was there. And I've like recreated that in my mind in those little spiritual exercises where I look for God back in those times when I couldn't feel anything because I was blocking God. But he was always right there. And I don't know why that gave me so much comfort, just knowing that through all the abuse, through all the addiction, and through all the loss, that God was holding me.
and he has.
He
is right now.
Yeah.
He is right now.
And the thing about it is
Goosebumps.
if we will get close to him, if we will let him, he will speak to us. He will tell me what he wants me to do. He will tell me. There have been times, and the one thing that I can really focus on is sponsees. If I'm having trouble with a sponsee, then excuse me, I'll take it to God, and we'll talk about it. What do I need to do? I'm not getting through to this person. And he will tell me what I need to do. He'll tell me, just love her. Just love her. Or I remember one time I was worried about a person that I know that used to come to the club a lot. And I was worried about what are we going to do with her, what are we going to do. And I prayed about it, and he said, leave her alone. I'll take care of her. You don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Now, my sponsor,
And that's
asked me,
hard for Faye.
my sponsor asked me. She said, "Do you hear voices?" I said, "No, I don't hear voices. I just, God tells me in my heart. He tells me what He wants me to know, and He speaks to me through my fellows in AA.
Yeah.
That's
Through
where
intuition,
I hear from Him
through
most.
coincidence, or what we used to call coincidence.
I'm with you. He speaks through me through my fellows in AA.
I've been having probably the last month, I've been just struggling with a bunch of stuff, and it's been a struggle. And I tend to go through these little periods where it's just tough, man. It just feels like you're in a fight with like 8 people at 8-on-1. And in the past, I would have, well, I'm throwing in the towel. It's over. I'm giving up. I'm going to. But I've learned in the last few years, when I go through those, and the worse the situation is, God's fixing to steer me in another direction. And I'm going to come out of it and I'm going to go, okay, that's what He was doing. And I'm telling y'all, I have been struggling up to today, up to walking in at 5:30 a while ago. It has been rough. But I know that something's cooking. So I got to hang on.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. And that's the only thing that's kept my behavior from being like it would have been in the past in this situation. And there's a guy in the program works with me, was a part of hearing some of it the other day that I've been dealing with. And he was like, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to pull this truck over and I'm going to walk over in the grass by myself. I don't want you to come over there. I need to walk. And so I did. And I walked over there and prayed. And I wouldn't have done that in the past ever. And I just, with all this going on, I know something big's fixing to happen. So I'm just glad that that's where I'm at today.
Isn't it awesome to know that?
It isn't fun, but
No,
it will
it's
be
not
fun.
fun.
It will be
But
fun.
It's
So,
awesome to get to the point where you know that that he's got it.
And when you were drinking, you probably knew exactly what was going to happen. So you went and got drunk, and then you woke up a few days later and didn't even remember the whole situation.
Yeah, I just skipped the situation.
It just kind of got worse.
Blanked it out.
All right, guys. Well, we're running out of time, and appreciate you ladies coming by tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Enjoyed
It's
It
been
means a lot
pleasure.
to all of us, and I know we'll have you back on the show, and appreciate all our listeners out there. Don't forget about the voicemail line and the email if you want to reach out to us, field some questions, and let us know. The next topic is going to be recovery versus sobriety. Yeah, and I really strongly do not like to use the word versus, because I would much rather see someone sober than having to worry about that as an added question. But recovery, sobriety, what's the difference to us? What's the difference to you? Whoever we have on the show, that's going to be our next topic. So love to hear from you guys. Want to hear from you guys. Reach out to us. Help us with some topics, things you want to hear about, anything that's going to help you with your recovery. So from Bossier City, signing off.